Grandpa Ron here again. Time to get back into our very basic Bible study we're calling A Slice of Truth. This is our study in Exodus. And today we're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 18. Remember in the last chapter, the people complained about water and God provided water. And they were being attacked by the Amalekites, and God gave them victory over them. And today we're going to shift gears in chapter 18 and look at a different aspect of their journey. So let's see what chapter 18 has to say. Verse 1. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Now remember, Moses had stayed with Jethro for 40 years. Moses knew the Sinai very well because he had lived there for so many years. And now Jethro is going to reunite with him. Verse 2. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Moses' wife Zipporah after he had sent her away, and her two sons, of whom one was named Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land, and the other was named Eleazar, for he said, the God of my father was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. If you remember back, Moses and Zipporah had kind of a falling out. She didn't like that act of circumcision, but she did give in to it, and it actually saved Moses' life from being killed by God. But Moses had to go on his mission to Egypt, and so he sent his wife and sons to stay with his father-in-law Jethro. And so it's been quite a while since he's seen them. Verse 5. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was camped at the Mount of God. So Jethro travels to see Moses. And he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her two sons with her. Then Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and he bowed down and kissed him. And they asked each other of their welfare and went into the tent. So a typical reunion. What's been happening? How's everything going? Let's bring each other up to speed. Verse 8. And Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had befallen them on the journey, and how the Lord had delivered them. It's been a few months now. This journey's been going on, and a lot has happened as we've studied. And so Moses brings Jethro up to date on all this stuff. Verse 9. And Jethro rejoiced over all the goodness which the Lord had done for Israel in delivering them from the hand of the Egyptians. Jethro was thrilled at this. This was like music to his ears. So Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord who delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of Pharaoh, and who delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods. Indeed, it was proven when they dealt proudly against the people. Jethro recognizes the one true and living God, the God of Israel, and he's thrilled over it. He's so excited about it that it's like a conversion experience for him. Verse 12. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law before God. Remember, a meal was very important. It was like sealing a contract. And this is a kind of a unifying event here, where Jethro is identifying with the children of Israel. And this is important, that he is a true believer in the true God at this point. Verse 13, and it came about the next day that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood about Moses from the morning until evening. They waited a long time to hear Moses, to have their cases heard. Verse 14, now when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, what is this thing that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, and all the people stand about you from morning until evening? Now, why are you doing this by yourself? This is exhausting for you. It's exhausting for the people. Verse 15, and Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, it comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and make known the statutes of God and his laws. Moses was the one that was the mediator between God and the people. So he was not only teaching them what God wanted and what God expected, but he was adjudicating their disagreements. And remember, we've got hundreds of thousands of men, possibly over 1 million men, the whole group, over a couple of million, if you count the men, women, children, all that. So one man trying to adjudicate disputes between all those, quite a chore. Verse 17, and Moses' father-in-law said to him, the thing that you are doing is not good. You will surely wear out both yourself and these people who are with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. So Jethro, being from the outside, could see the negative impact of what Moses was doing, both on Moses and the people. Sometimes it takes somebody from the outside looking in to see what's going on and detect these kinds of issues. Verse 19, now listen to me. I shall give you counsel, and God be with you. You be the people's representative before God, and you bring the disputes to God. Teach them the statutes and the laws, and make known to them the way in which they are to walk and the work they are to do. So he's going to start giving him advice. And he's not telling him to stop everything he's doing. You're going to continue to give him the law, explain God's requirements, but he's going to add some advice here. Verse 21, furthermore, you shall select out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain, and you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. So he's supposed to pick able men, men that are qualified, men that are honest, men that fear God. We're going to learn in later books of the Bible that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. These men respect God, hold God in awesome respect, and Moses is to pick out some of these men. Now, if we look ahead in future books like Numbers 11 points out that Moses did this, and he picked out 70 qualified men. So the number's not mentioned here, but it's mentioned later, 70. Verse 22, and let them judge the people at all times, and let it be that every major dispute they will bring to you, but every minor dispute they themselves will judge. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. So you need to delegate this authority. And it's kind of like we have here now, a tiered system where you have lower level courts, and then mid-level courts, and then appeals courts, and then the Supreme Court. But here, Moses is going to be the appeal judge. But all this done to distribute this burden. And not only does it distribute the burden for Moses, but it makes this whole process better for the people themselves. Verse 23, if you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure. And all these people also shall go to their place in peace. So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Now, of course, this isn't something that happens overnight. So this took some time to do. In fact, it probably wasn't fully implemented for a couple of chapters here after God actually delivered the Ten Commandments to Moses. But the process starts. Moses starts this process of selecting these men, these 70 men. This advice is godly advice because Jethro makes it clear, if you'll notice, if you do these things and God so commands you. I'm giving you this advice, but you listen to God. And if God confirms what I'm telling you, then you need to do it. Verse 25. And Moses chose able men out of Israel and made them heads over the people, leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, of tens. And they judged the people at all times. The difficult dispute they would bring to Moses, but every minor dispute they themselves would judge. So Moses followed this advice, and this set up a workable system. Verse 27, then Moses bade his father-in-law farewell, and he, Jethro, went his way into his own land. So Jethro goes back home, probably a changed man, and thrilled and excited about what has happened and what he has seen here. So this is quite a major step. This ends our chapter 18 and our lesson for today. But sometimes it's good to listen to outside advice if it's given by God-fearing men and women. In fact, later on in the Bible, in Proverbs, it says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. Of course, you have to pick those counselors wisely, and they have to be people of God, trusting God. I've known quite a few men, both within the church and without, that have been micromanagers. They wanted to control everything themselves. And when things are small, that's possible to do. But when things get to be larger, that becomes very, very difficult, if not impossible. And so it's good to delegate things down to relieve not only yourself of the burden, but to make it easier for everybody around you. Now the delegation keys are right here. They have to be able, qualified, capable people. You can't just pick someone at random and say, here, go do this. No, they've got to be qualified and capable. They've got to be godly. They've got to trust in God and rely on the Lord. They have to hate dishonesty and ill-gotten gain. So a nice system is set up here. And we're going to see that after the law is delivered to Moses and he just gives it to the people, that it's a law and a system that's admired by other nations around them. I hope that this has been interesting and meaningful to you. And next time we'll pick up and see what happens, the steps toward receiving the actual written law from God start to take place. In the meantime, God bless. See you then. Bye-bye.